The outcome of the 2016 election rocked the establishment like no other event in modern history. You remember those Huffington Post polls that had Hillary Clinton with a 99% chance of victory? Well, there was more to that than just extreme optimism. You see, whether you call it the New World Order or the globalists, or look at the open borders policy agenda of guys like George Soros, what you see is the achievement of a full spectrum dominance over all forms of communication, whether that be radio, print media, televised media, academia, the music industry, Hollywood. Any sort of mainstream communication source has been infiltrated and used as a source of control. As I pointed out, Rage Against the Machine is nothing more than controlled opposition. Those that seek to rule the world don't care if you have pierced ears or tattoos. They want control. They don't care about money. They print the money out of thin air. And the big shock to the establishment came because there was one neglected source of information, what they referred to as the dark corners of the internet. And it was largely left alone because it was believed that the audience size was too small and it wasn't appealing to large enough swaths of the population to bother with. And of course, 2016 taught them otherwise. They realized they were well behind the curve in controlling this source of information. This was an area where their narrative was being debunked almost real time now. People have gotten very, very good. Just look at the Ahmaud Arbery case, and you can see the narrative falls flat on its face. And so these puppet masters have realized they need to reestablish dominance on the one area of communication they've been neglecting, and that's the internet. This is why you've seen this massive campaign of banning, shadow banning. There was a lot of things that were just considered normal and allowed on platforms in 2012, 2013, 14, 15. InfoWars was on YouTube, and that was their first prominent victim. Huffington Post called Donald Trump the InfoWars president. All of a sudden, people realized that guys like Alex Jones were having a real impact on the way people were thinking. And so, of course, he was disappeared and flushed down the memory hole in terrifying fashion, by the way, all in one day. Now, President Trump has realized this, and he is beginning to push back against this mass campaign of censorship. And it seems almost like a little bit too little, too late. I hope that we see some action on it soon. But you can tell the establishment has now recognized the issue with the online world, and they have maneuvered to take complete control of it, just as they have with music, movies, and TV. And another big area that they've been focused hard on is the world of video games, because video games has proven to be this one area that's very resilient to their sort of narrative, truth-bending methods of control, quite possibly because it's a generally young and male space. We see Gamergate was the first big attempt to do this, and it failed. And so they've been trying to reestablish this dominance in the area ever since. How would you do that? How would you do that if you have celebrity under your control? We see now Twitch, a video game streaming service, hiring a woman, I guess, for their Trust and Safety Council, who openly stated most gamers are white supremacists, which is ridiculous. I mean, I'm pretty sure people from all walks of life and backgrounds are playing video games out there. But this is the hysteria word. This is the accusational term that they can use to justify banning, silencing, and censorship. Just like in the witch trials in Salem, the young girls were accusing people of being witches because it was the term that had the most immediate political impact at the time, but their victims were specific. It allowed them to settle generational old disputes. It wasn't a real hysteria. The victims were anything but random. It wasn't like people were seeing witches everywhere. These girls were challenged every step of the way. But because they had the political winds at their back, and influential people liked the fact that they were dealing with their political rivals in an expedient way, this power went unchecked for a long time. And back then, the solution was to allow legal action against false accusation with heavy damages. And today we just don't see that. We see people allowed to level the worst sort of accusations. He's a witch, she's a witch, right? With no consequence. And until that changes, we're probably stuck in this moral panic in perpetuity. So getting back to this idea of narrative control, what other steps is it that you would take if you were trying to do this? Well, here we see in the BBC, I first ran across this on Vox Populi, but PewDiePie signs exclusive live streaming deal with YouTube. You can see gaming star PewDiePie has signed an exclusive deal to live stream on YouTube after switching to a rival platform in 2019. Now here's the problem with PewDiePie. He arose in this early era of YouTube. He was a celebrity that rose to the top, but he didn't go through the normal set of gatekeepers. The ordinary people that you had to appease and prove yourself to. He rose to the top and he was uncontrollable. He was actually grassroots. It's not to say there's no grassroots talent that rises up, but they are very quickly assimilated into that machine. But PewDiePie didn't need to do that. So what do you do with him? They couldn't ban him because he was too big. He would just call them out. He was far too powerful. And they couldn't control what came out of his mouth. A terrifying prospect to the globalists. In fact, he's proven to be fairly red pill at various times. So what would you do if you were trying to control, say, the video game world and get your narratives out there? You would have to go after somebody big. And then you can just astroturf your messages through him. So he was YouTube's biggest independent video maker with more than 104 million subscribers and signed an exclusive deal with rival platform DLive in 2019. However, Mr. Kjelberg said returning to YouTube was a, quote, natural fit as he looked for new ways to connect with fans. Now look for these nonsense phrases like natural fit. That doesn't mean anything. Mr. Kjelberg said returning to YouTube was a natural fit as he looked for new ways to connect with fans. What does natural fit mean? It lets you kind of project your own meaning onto it, but it doesn't actually mean anything. And you can see words like this. Another one I'd tell you to look out for is the phrase, it's time. You'll hear that one a lot in politics. It's time for a woman president. It doesn't mean anything. It's just this thought-terminating cliche. And I think, well, what does that mean? What is special about this time? It's time, Oh, it just happens to be Hillary Clinton, and it works for your political agenda, but it doesn't mean anything. Is it the best qualified candidate or not? What's the time have to do with it? Natural fit, it's time, or phrases like, I stand for, or they stand for. What does that mean? Stand for. What are you standing around for? Go do something. Standing for something is meaningless. It doesn't mean anything. What are you doing? Any sort of phrase that with a cursory glance, if you're not reading, and you got to read each word here because each word is chosen very, very carefully for a very specific purpose. So look for these kind of out-of-place words. The 30-year-old Swedish video game maker began posting videos on YouTube in 2010. He found success playing and commenting on video games and posting daily videos for several years. In 2019, he announced he would no longer be streaming on YouTube and would move to DLive. He had 822,000 followers on DLive. And there is controversy around PewDiePie, and this is where I want to focus in. So, in 2017, Disney cut ties with him over allegations of anti-Semitism because he wore a World War II outfit. And Mr. Kjellberg accepted the material was offensive, but said he didn't support any kind of hateful attitudes. Yeah, good luck on being reasonable and logical with these people and their 80-year-old boogeymen. Later that year, he also used a racial slur, and he apologized for the incident. Commenting on his return to live streaming YouTube, the company said PewDiePie's previous comments were, quote, not in line with our values. Were he to violate our policies today, we'd take action accordingly, just as we would with any other creator, a company spokesman said. Now, what's interesting is who gets a pass and who doesn't get a pass for these no-no words, right? And so the idea behind PewDiePie has submitted to the Illuminati is, or whatever secret society or whoever is controlling music and entertainment behind the scenes, whoever is gatekeeping, whether it's CAA or what these connections are. Look at this one eye symbol that PewDiePie is flashing. It is the all-seeing eye, or the Eye of Horus. And you can actually see this. Celebrities do this all over the place. And it looks very strange, but the idea is they are signaling to the puppet masters or the people working behind the scenes that they are doing their bidding, that they are showing submission. Just keep bringing me whatever it is their poison, whether it's drugs or women or boys or whatever it is they need or are addicted to, or keep giving me roles, keep giving me magazine covers where I look beautiful, or whatever it is that the celebrity craves, as long as they continuously signal, not to us, they're not signaling to you and me. They are signaling to the people pulling the strings, the people controlling the money and the access to the doors of fame. They are signaling that I will do your bidding when the time comes. And it has to be hidden in plain sight. They have to be willing to do it in public. It's like the Pope sitting in a giant snake building between two snake's teeth under a giant statue of the snake. You have to signal in front of everybody to these puppet masters. And the goal is always the same: open borders, centralizing the means of production, and establishing an unelected one-world government. And the excuse is always some combination of humanitarianism or global health or environmentalism, your Green New Deal. They hide behind these seemingly virtuous masks in order to do evil. And so I think one of the reasons we've seen PewDiePie gets pretty negative news articles written about him regularly. The left media particularly slams him, and you see these negative incidents brought up routinely. And so I don't know, and neither do any of us, if there's some sort of secret society or who's controlling things behind the scene. I mean, you can run down the rabbit hole of these conspiracies for days and days and days. But I do think it's like, okay, if PewDiePie took the knee, what would we expect to see? Let's analyze this logically. So we see all these negative stories. And so the first thing, if PewDiePie, by signing with YouTube, has submitted to the establishment control, I would expect to see the negative stories stop. And that means across the board, whether it's the geeky programmer magazines that slam him, or, Vox Salon, Daily Beast, whatever, these little 20-year-old English majors that get out and just keep writing the same stupid papers they wrote in college. There are negative PewDiePie stories. They'll either stop making them because he is now on their team, or they won't get published anymore. It'll be like, yeah, we're not looking to cover that. But it's interesting, the all is forgiven thing, right? Because we've seen Eminem. He said the no-no words. We've seen Axl Rose. He said the no-no words, but these are darlings of the left-wing globalist media. Well, why? Well, because they've taken the knee, because they are controllable. So it's not this universal standard. It's something that if Donald Trump or Donald Trump Jr. or a nationalist had said, it would ruin their career forever and they'd howl and screech to the stars. But if it's words that Eminem says, there's subtlety, there's nuance, and there's forgiveness there because they're supporting the right team. They're serving their role as celebrity. And so there's no consequences. If you criticize the authorized individuals for things like this, left-wing media will say conservatives dredge up, like they dredge up Hillary Clinton's use of the term super predators, or they dredge up Axl Rose's history, or dredge up old Eminem lyrics. So expect we'll see this shift, because if PewDiePie has taken the knee, you're going to see this shift in, there was these, say, the heat of the moment, or just a slip. There'll be endless apologies made and just this long-suffering eye roll, like, you're still going to talk about this? He's been brought into the fold. So, 1, we'll see an end to the negative articles. And for 2, I would expect to see positive articles. Now, what do you see in terms of positive articles? We'll take someone like Obama, the ultimate taking a knee celebrity. You will see nothing but very flattering pictures. You will see pictures of him with his wife, and they'll look beautiful, and they'll be doing something stylish, and they'll be on vacation somewhere incredible, and there'll be puff piece after puff piece of how brilliant he was and how successful he was and how he's going to become the perfect exemplar of human virtue. So no more negative articles, a bunch of puff piece articles. But lastly, and here's the key thing I would say to look out for, is because now he's their mouthpiece. Now he's supposedly going to say what they want him to say. We saw this Taylor Swift. She endorsed some real obscure, oddball Democratic candidate, and you get this kind of I can be silent no longer thing, after at least seeming to try and avoid the political controversies. Expect PewDiePie to say something very un-PewDiePie, to endorse a policy or a person or something that's very out of step with like the normal PewDiePie MO. And he won't be joking. There will be an uncharacteristic seriousness, whereas PewDiePie kind of says things and cries and makes these big emotional, like, I get it, I don't get it, I'm sad, I'm angry. He's very entertaining, and it will be very flat, very robotic, like straight off the teleprompter. He will be given a script, and it will be as unnatural as watching Obama speak. He will be strictly on narrative, and it won't sound like anything he's ever said before. It'll be like, I know I joke around a lot, but this is a very serious issue. This election season is too critical. You have to get out and vote Biden or something, You'll see something like that. And the thing with what's going on right now is this 2020 election is far too critical to the powers that be. They were shocked when Donald Trump won, and they've managed to throw enough sand in the gears with the Russia collusion hoax and the Ukraine impeachment scandal and the almost aborted on conception China hoax. But they managed to slow him down. They've managed to keep him from draining the swamp. But when you see now what's coming out about Brennan and Comey, and it's all roads lead to Obama as directing this deep state resistance, they're desperate. And so they're not going to sit on their heels with an asset like PewDiePie. They need him to help them win. A lot of times they take these celebrities, they fatten them up, they give them their drugs or whatever they need, and just leave them alone until some critical point for some critical issue. Well, the critical time is now for the deep state. They have to win in 2020 because now the tables are slowly turning and Donald Trump is getting the better of the deep state. So I would suggest, at least if PewDiePie has taken the knee, you would have to expect him to be used by the powers that be here pretty quickly. He's going to get back on YouTube. He's going to start his new YouTube career, and the negative pieces go away, the puff pieces begin, and then before November, he's going to have to say something pretty un-PewDiePie because he's a useless asset to just let sit for years and years. They need to win now. Trump's looking at Google and Facebook and Twitter, and he's looking at dealing with the censorship and the bias and the radical left-wing agenda, the open borders globalist nonsense. And so, I don't know, you don't know, none of us know. But this is a pretty interesting topic, and we can try to watch this unfold in real time. And those of you that are doing handstands in the center of the city streets, celebrating the rise of this new world order, do keep in mind, don't expect more freedom and more rights from an unelected government that establishes itself through covert means versus a representative republic that was founded on the idea of freedom and individual liberty. And keep in mind those of you that are submitting to the New World Order globalist narrative. The only acceptable conspiracy theory is that there are no conspiracies.